data followed by some data manipulation. And right now, up to until now, you've been working with data in various formats. You've been doing things like creating functions, looking at data through data visualizations, and so forth. At some point, though, you may want to actually save those visualizations or the data that you've created. So let's first go over that to how we may be able to do that. One thing that you might have already noticed before is when you create a data visualization, you are able to save it using a function called ggsave. Well, we'll expand with that and actually see how we can save data visualization using a different way. But before we do that, make sure that you have your Gapminder data read into your environment, which might already be there if you haven't closed your computer. But if not, then why don't we have some code to either bring that in from your CSV that you have saved within your project data folder, or you can even read that in from the website itself. So I'll paste that into the chat. We can get started. This would probably be too difficult to write down from the screen. Okay, so either one of these should get you started, and then we can continue on. Okay, and you'll know that you're successful in reading in the data because you will see it over here on your right under the environment section. Okay. So now let's try to save a PDF file of a data visualization. But this time we'll do it a little differently. We're going to create a data visualization. So that means we're going to need our library of ggplot2. Following that, let's go ahead and specify the file that we want to save. So there's actually a function called PDF. And with that, we can specify the file name that we want. For this one, I'm going to call it life expectancy versus time. .pdf. To keep it shorter, you can call it something else. And then I'm going to specify how big of a document I want. So after this first file name, I'm going to put a comma, and then the width, I'll specify as 12, and height as 4. Okay. The next thing after this is everything I want written to this PDF document should come after this point. So if you recall, we were able to create some data visualizations using our ggplot. And we're going to make that data refer to our Gapminder. We're going to give it some aesthetics, the year, life expectancy, and we'll give it the color of country. So the actual geometry that we'll add is a line plot. And then we're going to give it a theme of the legend position, which is none. Okay. You might have noticed I didn't actually type this out, legend.position. I just typed a little bit. And if you see that the cursor is on the place that you want, for example, let me do that again. Just like that. And you don't want to type it out, you can just press the tab button to autocomplete. Okay. Now, if you wanted to add additional pages, like you want another graph, then you would just make another graph right after this point. But for this example, let's just have a single page with one graph. And in order to tell R that we're done and we want to output our PDF file, we need to use this function that tells it to turn off this PDF writing device. Okay, now let's see if it worked. So first, we'll load our library. And also as a reminder, how did I run this thing? Well, there's a few ways to run some code in R. I like doing it line by line. You can highlight whatever you want to run and then go to this run button. And if you notice as you hover over it, it says Control Enter as a shortcut. So that's what I'm doing, is as long as my cursor is on that line, I can run that line with Control Enter. I wasn't here the last couple of days, so I don't know if that's redundant, but just in case. Okay. And you'll notice that as I ran this PDF line, it started to write to PDF. And whatever I want to write, that's what I'm going to run. So let's run this ggplot. You'll notice there's no output, but that's okay. It's actually not writing it to the window, it's writing it to the file. And then finally, when we're ready, let's go ahead and run this last function. Okay, null device, meaning it's disconnected. It has now written our file. Let's check it out. Let's see what it made. Click on the PDF. And you'll see that it made a nice figure and put it in a PDF for us. You might wonder, I thought we could just use that GG save, and you can. But what if you're doing something a bit more automatic? Okay, so for example, what if you were including this graph with some of the functions that you created, or you're going and creating loops where you can make like 10 different graphs, 20 different graphs, all based off some different criteria that you're entering. It'd be relatively annoying to save each one manually. Okay, so using this is a code way to do some automated data visualizations and save things to PDF. All right, so it can make things quite convenient. So a challenge right now is, I kind of gave you a hint, but what if you wanted to make a second PDF within the same PDF file, so a second page rather, and the second page should be a facet plot. Okay, so this is challenge 1 in your notes. Let's make that look a little better. Can you print a second page in the PDF? And this is the same thing that you have in your notes. Let's take a second to try this out. Okay, so that facet grid, that came from an earlier lesson. So if that didn't come off the top of your head, no worries. The main thing to get from this challenge is, how do you write a second page? So in our first example, just by writing this graph right here to PDF, it wrote it as a single page. So if I want to do the same graph, but now a second page with a facet grid, I need to edit this code so that it has a facet grid. So I'm just gonna copy my original code because we're gonna edit it. paste it down here to make a copy. And let's see what we can do to add a second page with a facet grid. So the second page is going to be the same data, the same graph. It's just going to have a facet grid with the continent. So the one way you can do is like this, where you make the graph again, a copy, but this time we're going to add the facet grid based off continent. Okay. Although, as you know, we're doing reproducible types of coding, like for research. Copy pasting entire chunks of code is going to get kind of messy and maybe a little bit redundant. So since this is literally the same thing, this all the way up to here, why not just assign this as something like, we'll call it P. Right? That way I don't have to copy paste the whole thing. And now I can just write just like that. Okay, so now I have two separate graphs. And if you leave the original name, it's going to override it, which is fine. Maybe I want to make a second file, so I'll put a 2 there. And let's see how that works. So I'm going to run this whole chunk. And then let's check it out. All right, there you go. Okay. Any questions? Well, I made a mistake. Did anyone notice what it was? I only have one page. No one noticed that. Huh. Let's go through what happened. Okay, I started writing to PDF. I assigned the first graph, and then I wrote the second graph. Oh, I forgot to actually write the first graph. So even though I assigned it, I didn't actually run it by itself. Exactly. Okay, great. Good catch. So let's try that again. And there it is. Okay, one PDF, two separate pages. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, well, now let's check out something similar. How do we write data? If the PDF didn't open, my guess is it's linked to how PDFs are opened on your computer. Maybe it's trying to open in a browser. If it's not opening directly from the R environment, like for example, if you're online, like using Posit Cloud, you might have to download it to your computer and then like manually open it in Adobe Acrobat, or whatever you typically open PDFs with. Okay, now let's try writing some data. So we have been playing around with filtering data from earlier lessons. And one of the things that you can do is subset a data set to something that's specific. So for example, going back to the Gapminder, maybe you only wanted it for a specific country like Australia. All right, so if I look at Gapminder, okay, that's going to have everything, but I want to specifically subset it for Australia. So we can do that using the square brackets. And if you recall, we want to filter rows. That's going to be, where should that be actually? You tell me. If I want to filter rows, is that going to go before the comma or after the comma? So I should write something before the comma or after the comma for filtering rows. Before, yeah. So before the commas for rows, after the commas for columns. All right, so that means I want to filter it only when the Gapminder country is equal to Australia. All right. So I just wanted to check that. I could run this. And then, yeah, looks good. I'm saying only Australia. Great. Probably easier if I save this to its separate object. I'll just call it Australia subset. So I'll assign it there. It's in our environment, but it's not quite on our computers yet. So we want to write this table to disk. So literally it's write table, dot table. What are we trying to write? It's going to be this subset that we're creating. And then comma. I'm going to add a, press enter so I can make some space to make it look nice. But you can technically write it all in one line. I'm going to give it a file name. For me, I'm going to store it under a folder I already have called clean data. I don't remember if you've created that earlier. If not, you can store it wherever you want. I'm putting it in clean data. And, oops, sorry. Gapminder.aus.csv. We're not quite done. Writing table doesn't quite know, even though I'm calling it a CSV, it may not know how to actually write the file. CSV again stands for comma separated values. So let's tell it that it's separated by commas. So your columns will be separated by commas. Okay. So let's try that out. And if I go check under clean data, there it is. Okay, so we're able to now filter some data and then go ahead and write it to file. Although, did it really work? Let's check it out. So I could read this back and then check, did it import correctly? Or we can actually check from the terminal itself without even having to read this into R, right? So if you go into the terminal, which is down here, it's a little button that says terminal, click on that. And then there's a function called head, which you might recognize that also works in R similarly. So I'm going to type in head and then tell it where I saved that data. So for me, that was cleaned data, and it's Gapminder aus.csv. Okay, so basically putting in this file, what does it look like? And where did these quotes come from? I don't want quotes in it. It's going to be annoying to remove once I re-import it back. So it wrote data, but it looks like something kind of went wrong. Why is it doing that? And maybe you haven't used a particular function in a while or just not familiar with it. You can actually look at the help file for something by typing in a question mark and then whatever you want to look up. Just like that. So question mark, write that dot table, load this one up, and then you'll see the help file. And if we look at this, you're going to see that there's a whole bunch of options. One of those is going to be that the default for quotes is what? Or we see over here, quotes are true. Oh, I don't want that. So that means I should actually get rid of that. Go back here and add the option quote equals false. And any other options I may want to change. There's also something called row names like 61, 62, 63. I didn't want that. So if I want to remove that, I can do row.names equals false. All of these options you can check within the help file. So that can be very useful. And now when I run it again and go back to the terminal to check, I can see that it looks a lot better. It got rid of those numbers I didn't want, those row names, and it has my data nice and clean without quotes. All right. So far, so good. Any questions?
Yeah, Ben, this is Jan Moore. I'm doing this by voice because it's easier than typing. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hi. If you change an option value like you just did, does it only change it for the file that you're working on, or does it change it for future files?
Good question. It does only change it for the file that you're working on. It won't change the default behavior of the function itself.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Okay. Let's see, the terminal, let's see, it should be at the bottom unless it got moved around. That's a possibility. But it should be console, and then next to it is terminal. If it's not there, it's possible it did get moved around. Like if I clicked X, then it's gone. But I believe you can put it back. There's probably like a little setting to put something back if it got closed. But off the top of my head, I don't remember. Or maybe it's this. No, it's probably in here though. Let's see. If you can't open the file, it could be because this folder doesn't exist. So the folder clean data, if that's not there, you can actually create it. The quick way is if you click new folder and then just create it like clean data. Mine already exists, so I won't click OK. But try creating the folder first and then running it again to see if that's the issue. Okay, cool. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. I'm getting error when I run the head command in terminal. It says that that head is not recognized as an internal or external command.
Is it in the console or the terminal? Like,
It's in terminal.
Are you on Windows or Macintosh computer?
Windows.
Windows? Oh, really? Wonder why. It's a good question. I'm not totally sure. It could be another way to look at it. Well, off the top of my head, what you can do is actually read the file in and then check it in R. So like without remembering the code, you can go to import dataset and then click on from text. And then you would go look for the file itself. So like our Gapminder.
Yeah, it's there.
And then you can check. So without using the head code, you can do it this way too, to check to
Yeah,
see.
but I don't know why the head code is, I'm just putting my error in the Zoom chat.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure either, actually. It could be that something to do with like the bash terminal, because I have other stuff installed like git bash and all these other things that maybe it added it and I didn't recognize that it's not standard.
Yeah, this is the error I'm getting.
Okay, that's a new one. That's good to know. But that's not going to be the only thing that you can use to check the data. You can try the one that I just mentioned, so that way it's still possible, and to see if whether or not it wrote your data correctly.
Can you please show me once import data sets, right? And then from text, right?
Yes.
And then go to the clean data and then open the file.
That's right.
Yeah, I can see that. It did not double quotes my data. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
quote is false. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's fine. Everything is fine.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why the head isn't working for everyone. But it could be that it's just not on everyone's computer. So there's definitely other ways that you can use to check. Okay. All right. I think in the interest of time, we're going to move on to the next part. But just as a note, notice that when we were creating this subset, you can really use any criterion that you like in order to get a different subset and then write it. So for example, if I wanted it to be a specific year, I can change this to a year, etc.